Hello, I'm Luke with Automate SQL. In this demo, we'll take a look at a Windows answer file and then perform an unattended installation of Windows Server 2022 using that answer file. This does go along with a blog post over at Automate SQL. It's called How to Create Windows Answer Files for Unattended Installations. And if you haven't done so, I'd recommend taking a look at that post prior to jumping in the demo if you are following along. I'll put the link down in the description. So I've got the post pulled up. If you do want to follow along in the demo, there are a few prerequisites to install. VMware Workstation Pro, the trial version's just fine. The Windows Assessment Toolkit, Windows Assessment and Deployment Toolkit, WinImage. We'll use this tool to create a floppy disk image. Windows Server 2022 Evaluation, ISO. It's good for 180 days. And Visual Studio Code. So now we're on the demo machine. It's just a Windows 11 machine. And the first step is just to install the ADK. And the default install path is fine. I'm going to click no on this, click next, and then of course we accept the license agreement. The only tool that we need are the deployment tools, so I'm going to uncheck everything except that and then click install. Go ahead and click close and then install the WinImage. I'm going to leave both of these blank and then just click next, accept the license agreement. Our next step is to grab the answer file that we're using in this demo, and that can be found back on the blog post. There's a link here where you can download that. That's this zip file. I've already downloaded it, and I actually created a folder on my C drive, Windows Server 2022 demo, and it's called Auto Unattend XML. The naming of this file is very important. If it's not named this, the installation will not find it, and it also has to be on the root of the floppy disk. So let's go ahead and open up the ADK or Windows System Image Manager. The next step, we need to mount the ISO and then copy a file from the sources folder named install WIM. This is our installation image to the C drive or another drive. You may have another drive to copy it to, but that drive needs to be read and writable. Otherwise, when we try to add it here in the System Image Manager, it will fail because it needs to be read and writable. So I have that ISO under downloads, and here it is. So we've got it mounted. We need to go into the sources folder, look for install WIM, and copy it over to the folder that you created for the demo. Okay, now that we have that, let's go back to the Windows System Image Manager In Windows Image, we need to select a Windows image. So just right click in this box and then select a Windows image. And we're going to choose install.wim. Click open. Here we're going to select an image. The image that we want is the second one, Windows Server 2022 Standard. The first one is core. It doesn't include the GUI. And these two down here are Data Center Core and Data Center. So just choose the second one and click OK. You'll get this message that states that it cannot find an existing catalog file associated with this image. Go ahead and click yes, and it will create the catalog for us. This takes a few minutes. Alright, that is complete. Our next step is to create an answer file. We're actually going to open this one, unattended XML. So you'll get this message stating that it cannot find the file Windows answer file demo install.wim. That's because we're in a different folder. And just click yes on this. But before I do, I want to open this up and show you what it's referencing in the XML. So we're going to open it with Visual Studio Code. Click open. So here is the raw XML. If we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see where that reference is coming from in the offline image, and it's got this directory. So when I click OK, this directory will be updated in the XML. Or click yes. Go full screen. So in the blog post, you can hit a link that takes you to all of these components that's here. We won't cover most of those in this video, but just know that there are a lot of different configurations that you can do and apply during the unattended installation. So you'll notice here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through 7. These are different passes, configuration passes, and they're used to specify different phases of the Windows setup. Unattended installation settings can be applied in one or more passes. So let's start with the Windows PE. This is a small operating system used to install, deploy, and repair Windows desktop editions and Windows Server. You'll notice that this component, the first one we have, is Microsoft Windows International Core, WinPE. If we click on that, you can see over here we're setting the actual locale settings for Windows PE. And on the second one here, Microsoft Windows Setup. So we're going to be configuring our disks, the image install, and the user data. So if we go ahead and expand disk configuration, we've only got one disk that we're going to be configuring. So it's going to be disk 0. And if you notice, will wipe disk equals true. That means anything on that disk will be removed as part of the installation. Next step is to create the partitions. This is a UEFI image that we're going to be using. There's certain partitions that have to be in place. There's 4 partitions that have to be in place for EFI. The first one is the primary partition, and this is where we're going to install the recovery tools. The second one is the EFI partition or system partition. I did want to show you size is 499, that's megabytes. The size for this partition is 280. Partition 3 is the Microsoft Reserved partition, or MSR. it must be 16 megabytes or larger. And then our fourth partition is where we're going to install Windows. So you'll notice that extend is set to true. That just means that this partition will be extended all the way out to the end of the disk. The next step is to modify those partitions. So the first one is the recovery partition. You'll notice that this partition type is the only one that has a type ID. So that type ID you can find out on Microsoft's site. There's a link to the components, and it should bring you to this page, and you can search for type ID, and it's going to be under modify partition and then type ID. We're going to scroll down. We're not doing a BIOS image, we're doing the UEFI. And then you can see that the recovery utility partition must have this type ID, and you can grab and copy and paste that into your new answer file if you're creating one. So partition 2 is formatted with FAT32. That's our system. We're putting a label named system on that one. MSR, nothing to do here. And then our Windows partition, we're going to format it as NTFS, give it a drive letter, which is C. And now if we go to the image install, take a look at the OS image. So you see install from, expand that, and you'll see metadata key equals image index. So here the key is the image index, the value is 2. So where do we get 2 from? We use the deployment image servicing and management tool to find that ID. So let's go ahead and just jump into a PowerShell window. You'll need to do this as an admin. You can do this in the terminal window as well. And just change the directory to your demo folder. And now we're going to run DISM get image info, and then tell it where the image file is that we're looking at. So that gives us this information, so we can see that index 1 maps to server 2022 standard evaluation. Index 2 gives us standard evaluation desktop experience, so that's with the GUI, and that's where we get this 2 from. The next step is install 2. We're going to install to disk ID 0 and then partition 4. User data, there's no, actually on user data, just set your username and then your organization. Product key, we don't have a product key, we're just going to use the evaluation. The second configuration pass is offline servicing. OUA, those are settings related to the Windows user account controls, formerly known as the limited user account. So we're just turning that off. Here again, that may not be something you want to do in a production environment. We're not doing anything under the third configuration pass, generalize. We're going to specialize, and then we're going to the Microsoft Windows IE ESC component, and that's the enhanced security configuration for Internet Explorer. We're going to turn it off for admins. We're going to leave it on for users. The next is we're setting the locale values for the actual for Windows instead of the WinPE. They're all en-us. Next is skip auto activation is true. We're going to set do not open server manager at logon to true. And then our computer name is Win22 2022 image, and then we're setting the time zone to Central Time. We're not doing anything in step 5 or 6. We come down to 7, which is the out of box experience, and then we'll notice we have the shell set up again. So you can have some of these components can be done under different passes. So this one, shell setup, and then here again we're doing it. So this time we're actually going to use it to auto log on as the administrator. And then we've got some first logon commands that we're going to do. These are all synchronous commands, and these are used to set WinRM to use HTTPS over port 5986, and then it also creates a Windows firewall rule to allow that traffic through. WinRM is used to remotely manage Windows Server, and these commands are just PowerShell commands. We'll take a look at number 5 here. Basically setting it, we're enabling basic authentication. And then step 7 is to restart the computer. And then OOBE, we're setting hide the end user license page to true, and a few other settings here to true. User accounts, we're setting our admin password. You can change this to whatever you'd like. So all of these components, if we take a real quick look at the XML, you'll see that those map to the component names here. So for example, Windows International Core, and then that's where we're setting our locale values. We're going to save that answer file. No warnings down here at the bottom, so that's good. And we can go ahead and just minimize this. The next step is to create a floppy disk image with this answer file on it. So just go ahead and open up WinImage. And click File, then New. The defaults are fine. Now we're going to inject that answer file. And then save this. We're going to change the type from IMZ to virtual floppy image. You can name this anything. I'm going to also place it into the same folder we've been working in. I'm just naming it floppy.flp. Click Save. You can go ahead and close out of WinImage now. Now we're going to go to VMware Workstation and build our new VM using that answer file and that floppy disk. So just go up to File, New Virtual Machine. I'm going to choose Custom instead of Typical. Click Next. Hardware compatibility isn't fine. I'm actually going to say I will install the operating system later. Click Next. It is a Windows operating system that we will be installing. I'll go ahead and click the version, which is Windows Server 2022. Give it a name. Make sure you choose UEFI as the firmware type. If you choose BIOS, this answer file will not work. and I'll give it 4 gigs of RAM. Accepting the defaults, and then create a new virtual disk. 60 gigs is fine. Alright, now we're going to go into settings for that VM, and we need to mount that ISO. So click on CD, DVD, click on use ISO image file, and then browse to wherever you've got that ISO for Windows Server 2022. And we also need to add a floppy drive. And then we're going to choose use floppy image file, browse, and choose our floppy.flp file. Then click OK. Now we're ready to start it. When you start it, you'll need to go click in here, so that whenever it says press any key to continue, you can press a key. If you get this message, just hit enter. And now we wait. Alright, the installation is complete, but you'll notice that your VM will go through several other scripts, and then at the end it will restart and then auto log on using the administrator login. Once it's complete, we'll take a look at a few of the settings that we did set using the answer file. That would be the time zone, the computer name. Of course, we'll verify that it does auto log on, and then also take a look at the firewall to make sure that a firewall rule got added for WinRM. I'm not going to install the VMware tools or anything. Just when it finishes, I'll click I finished installing. I'm not going to install VMware tools. However, we will take a look at the configuration options that we enabled using the answer file. The first being making sure that the time and date are correct, and we're using Central Time. So let's go ahead and just take a quick look at date and time and make sure the time zone is Central, and it is, so that's confirmed. Next is we confirmed that Server Manager did not open. We did automatically log on, and we're going to check the server name. Server name's confirmed. It is Win2022 image. Next up, we're going to just take a quick look at the firewall. And if we click on inbound rules, we should see a rule for WinRM, and we do. Windows Remote Management, HTTPS in, allowing port 5986. So that's the end of the demo. Thanks a lot for watching.